recently we found some good information coming in advance of the release of Barack Obama's next budget, which should be released on March 4th. That's what we believe. So we found out that it's likely that what we had feared would be the grand bargain will not be included, although we'll have some debate about that. More good news, though. It looks like Obama will once again, hopefully, try to clamp down on some of the tax evasion that comes in the form of corporate offshore profits being hidden from U.S. taxation. Now, this topic comes up from time to time, and we don't know that he'll actually be able to do it. He has tried in the past, or at least said that he's trying. But it looks like they are going to once again attempt to clamp down on that. Now, if you don't understand this, so basically there is a fairly high tax rate of 35% when foreign profits are brought back to the U.S., which is why they don't bring it back to the U.S. They hide it in foreign accounts. The chairman of the White House Council of Economic Advisors said that some U.S. businesses move profits into low-tax jurisdictions for reasons that have no economic benefit other than to avoid taxes, which should be clear, and such profit shifting is extensive. We're talking about a massive amount of money being hidden from lawful, legal U.S. taxation.
And of course, the response to that would be is that, as he says, there's no economic benefit other than to avoid taxes, which is an economic benefit.
Which is a very odd sentence, exactly.
It's a significant, that's a great economic benefit.
When Apple pays 2% corporate taxes by registering themselves as a corporation in Ireland instead of the United States, that's a pretty substantial economic benefit.
Yeah. Right. So obviously what he's referring to is you're not really doing business in Bermuda. Exactly. We know that, right? And so we're not going to let you get away with it anymore. I would love to see the implementation of this. That would be amazing. Yeah. And let's just to clarify one thing. 35%, you can have a conversation about whether that's too high, too low, et cetera. Now, the loopholes are so extensive, obviously this being a major one, that the effective tax rate for corporations is at a record low, okay? And by the way, internationally, we're lower than other people, so much lower.
In some particular cases, negative. Yes. Because when you take into account subsidies and things like that, they actually get more money back.
Right, so when they say, oh my God, 35%, that's the highest rate. No, but what do you actually pay? And don't get them wrong, they're corporations. Their whole point is to make every single cent that they can. So if taxes were incredibly low, they were 5%, and by hiding the money in Bermuda, they could lower it to 2%, they would. Right? Because that would be 3% that they would put in their pocket, and that would be their economic benefit. So the trick is to pass laws to make sure they can't cheat on those taxes, because given the opportunity, of course they will.
It's not necessarily the case that Obama is going to be able to force them to bring the money back. The only way that we could really do that, or that we hear about doing this, is the Republican proposals constantly to give tax holidays and things like that. But they do say that the president's proposal in that regard to get some taxes out of the money being held abroad would be an international minimum tax, which seems like that's a pretty tough row to hoe. How do you get all countries to sign on to that, or at least the countries where people are hiding significant amounts of money? There's also some positive information coming out of this report.
I mean, yeah, I think you do it by, governing. You do it by saying, all right, I mean, if you guys are going to do this, or your companies can't do business here, and we're not, and your money is no good in our markets. I mean, I'm sure I'm looking at this rather simply, but there are ways to get countries to comply by making it very difficult on those countries that don't comply.
And other good news is the Europeans are already working on this. They're also annoyed by the tax avoidance that these corporations are doing. They're not just avoiding American taxes, they're avoiding taxes all over the world, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're putting pressure on not just Bermuda, but also Ireland and the Netherlands, etc. That's where you get the Dutch sandwich and the double Irish. These are
basically they're countries that are shopping around to themselves around to corporations offering the lowest tax rate, because hey, 2% of Apple's income in Ireland, considering that Apple doesn't exist in Ireland, that's a windfall for them. So what they're trying to avoid with what Cenk is talking about is this kind of lowest bidder attitude towards public taxation. But be careful of what Obama proposes, because he keeps going back to phrases like, whatever we propose will be revenue neutral. No, it can't be revenue neutral. In actual terms, you're paying the lowest amount as a corporation than you've paid in nearly 60 years. We don't want to lock that in. Yeah. We want to bring that back up, because your corporations at the same time are at record highs. So anytime someone says, let's lock in something that's revenue neutral but makes more sense, say, no, we don't want revenue neutral.
And I thought the whole point was to reduce the deficit, right? I mean, in the beginning of the article, it talks about deficit reduction, et cetera. But if it's revenue neutral, you're not. not. And so how would it be revenue neutral if you're making sure that they pay the taxes they're not paying now? You lower their rates.
Yes.
But wait a minute. Why are we lowering the corporate tax rate? What, the corporations don't have enough of a break in this country? And what it does is it gets the corporations to be able to have sound bites like, Obama, oh, he's killing us. He's killing us. Oh, I've got money offshore because I'm doing business offshore, and he's trying to prevent that. But in reality, what Obama's doing is he did, by the way, with the Bush tax cuts, he locked in 94% of the gains of those tax cuts for the wealthy and made them permanent. Now, yes, he did raise taxes that it was the equivalent of 6% of those gains, right? But 94% got locked in permanent, which even Bush couldn't do. This time it looks like he's trying to lock in, if it's really revenue neutral, 100% of it.
Right, but that's the issue, is the revenue neutral talk for them? Like, is that, because if, look, I'm so far out of my element here, but if you're moving almost, if Apple, take Apple's example, if you're avoiding paying 35% because you can move it to Ireland and pay 2% and pretend that you're, and then he locks something in where they end up paying a lower rate than 35%, but it's above 2, that's not revenue neutral. I mean, then
but then you get into the whole issue of the other taxes they're paying in other areas. You get into a lot of proposals that the administration will throw out, and Republicans will be even more extreme about this, as you might expect, but to say, well, we'll have a repatriation holiday where you don't have to pay any penalty for avoiding America. Yeah, just forget all that. Just make them pay their, enforce the laws we have, as well as passing new ones. Make them pay their freight.
Fair, totally. The question is that is the phrase revenue neutral in there for the Republicans? Like, and then it doesn't really happen. That's the sort of the large. I don't know.
Well, if past negotiations are a guide, it's not in there for the Republicans. President Obama means it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is in a sense. It's to coax them, right? Mm-hmm. But then he'll deliver on that.
But it's not that that the word is in there. It's that the policy is in there.
Right.
And I love the idea of like, well, I know you guys have been breaking the law, if not the letter of the law, at least the spirit of the law. But it'll be revenue neutral. It'd be like if you found out that somebody was robbing your house, your mate is robbing your house. Okay, we're gonna stop the robbery, and I'm just gonna pay you an extra $100 a week. No, you're fucking robbing me, okay? You just have to give the money back. And I don't know exactly what sorts of penalties we can levy on them, but...
And I'd really like that silverware back.
It's Butch Cassidy, it's Paul Newman's great line in Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid of like, why are you making me blow this up? Just give me the money and I won't blow up your train. Like if you just pay me not to blow up your train, then you take a bunch of your money and you give some of it to me, and nobody shoots at anybody. It's done. Yeah.
I love this analogy. Yeah. I hadn't thought of it that way, but it's the idea that a bank robber or anyone gets caught, and he says, "Wait! I just want to make sure. Is this going to be revenue neutral?" Like I can give you some of the money back, but then you're going to give it back to me, right?
Stock options or something.